All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining in tonight for the post-game pint. I'm Seth Stows of Twins Daily, and unfortunately, I get to be your host tonight for the team's third straight loss. They were 10-2. Now they're 10-5. The season's over. With that, I am joined on the panel tonight by Lucas C. Hafer. You can probably see him just to the left here. Lucas, how we doing tonight?
Other than the stinker the Twins put out there, I'm not doing too bad.
Good. All right, as we get more people in here, I just want to remind people down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's the Q&A section. We'll try to take your questions from there. We certainly anticipate everyone will remain positive through this three-game losing streak, I'm sure, but I'm sure there's also plenty of questions. Feel free to also use the Q&A or the chat room. Either is totally fine. But we better start out. Oh, the other thing is, if you want to be on the show with us, have a question asked, or you want to ask a question, just do the raise your hand thing, and I will allow you to talk. You'll be able to ask your question live. I don't think we've had anyone who's done that yet. Obviously, we'd like to keep it a G or PG rating on the show, so be careful with your question. You can also use the chat. But let's get started. Lucas, you got anything good you're drinking this evening?
Yeah, tonight I've got a Hot Peak IPA from Breckenridge Brewery out of Colorado. So,
very nice. Looks fantastic.
Yeah, it tastes fantastic.
And I'm sure everyone will be shocked that I've got a little Dasani water going here tonight. Although, as Mr. Bonus would say, if he was on here tonight, and we want to hear what everyone else is drinking. I see Mike Link drinking a little whiskey. Watching the Twins the last few days requires it. I guess that's one way to look at it. So, but more important in the Q&A, TC Anel asks, and I'll let you answer this one, Lucas. You know, there's only 45 games left in the season, just 75% of the season left. Will the Twins ever win a game again?
Ever? Probably not. I think it's probably best to just put it in for the season, call it good. We won, what was it, 10 of the first 12? Close enough. Good
it's
enough.
Over.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to jump. There's so many issues, but let's just kind of talk through the first few innings, and then, like I said, we'll get to the questions in the Q&A and in the chat room. And again, if you do want to add your contribution to the show, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll let you talk. So I think we need to start out. The story of the game was Jake Odorizzi returning. And obviously, you're a physical therapist. You've been on before this. He had the upper back kind of shoulder area that had just tightened up on him. For me, I was looking at, can he reach a certain number of pitches, and probably tomorrow, how does he feel? Or at least when he throws his next bullpen. For you, what would you be looking for from Jake Odorizzi over the next couple of days?
Yeah, no, the exact same thing. Just kind of see how his body responds to, because really, I don't recall, he didn't throw in any of the inter-squad games, did he? Or maybe just like one or two.
Early.
Yeah, so this is really the first action he's seen since at least spring training, or possibly even since the playoffs. So yeah, just kind of going out there, seeing how the back feels tomorrow, how the shoulder feels tomorrow. I think they had said that he had worked up to about like 75 pitches was the goal, and he reached 71 tonight. Ideally, you would have liked to see him do that in more than just 3 innings. But, the injury that he had, it was to the Twins described it as an intercostal muscle, which I talked about in a previous Pintcast, how that's really the muscles that are between the ribs. So it's not like a big power-generating muscle. It's more of one of those, what's your pain tolerance, what's your pain levels at. If you can fight through it, it's probably fine to fight through. But, if you don't have to, and really up to this point, the Twins hadn't felt like they had to, it's better to be safer than sorry.
And real quick, before we get along further, I know in the pregame press conference, Baldelli was asked if Rich Hill would be able to be potentially one of the starters in Milwaukee, and he pretty much shut that down. Again, is age a big component in what he's dealing with, do you think? Or is it just, he just needs to get back out there?
Yeah, I think age is definitely a component. As we age, our healing rates slow down. That's true whether you're a Major League Baseball player or just anyone on the street. but also he's coming off a semi-experimental elbow surgery. We've seen in the past that when he's healthy, he's very, very effective. And I kind of wrote about this a little bit at Twins Daily, not to self-promote myself a little bit too much, but
that's what we do around here, man. That's what we do.
Yeah, there you go. I think the Twins are just being very, very careful, very, very cautious at this point, particularly with Hill, because you know, if, like I said before, if he is ready and healthy, he has ace level stuff, or he has number 2 starter in the playoff type stuff. And when it comes to the playoffs, you need those types of pitchers. Maybe not so much in a random game in August, but I think as the season goes on, you'll see his starts come closer and closer together, pitch count go up. I think the Twins' goal is really to have him peaking by the time the playoffs hit, rather than, you know, first week in September or something like that.
I want to ask you this, and I think it kind of, again, just goes along the path of the game. After Odorizzi went 3 innings today, Lewis Thorpe was brought in, and he's only thrown, you know, 6-8 innings so far this year. I don't think that's a big sample size. In that small sample, though, his fastball velocity has been down a couple miles per hour. I'm curious from your perspective how big of a deal that is. The Twins today, when he was clearly not – I mean, he only threw 6 pitches, but they saw it right away and got him out of there. Unfortunately, it was probably too late. But from your perspective, what are your thoughts as we look at the velocity of Thorpe? Is it related to summer camp, or is there something else you're seeing?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, if it was, say, a Kala who dropped 2 miles an hour, 3 miles an hour, it wouldn't be that big of a deal going from 99 to 96. But if you're going from 91 to 88, and not only that, but your command issues go down as well, you know, I don't think it would be – after every outing, he said that he feels fine. But you usually don't see drops of fastball velocity by that or to that extent for no reason. So whether that's his arm just isn't up, you know, in shape yet, whether that's, you know, maybe his lower legs aren't in shape yet, so he's not generating enough power through the legs. You know, maybe there's an injury, who knows? But usually you don't see that type of drop in velocity for no reason. So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of days if there's any news, an IL stint, or if there's, you know, if he gets demoted, someone else gets brought back up from the 60-man squad. I don't know. You know, maybe it's a mechanical issue and Wes Johnson just needs to get together with him and talk about that. You know, I don't think there's any one thing that I've seen that's maybe say, oh, it's got to be this. But I think, you know, the flags kind of got to go up to an extent to, you know, get him checked out or demoted to get his head right or something.
For sure. And Mike Link asked the question in the Q&A, should Thorpe be sent to St. Paul and someone else come in? Now, I was a big believer. He didn't give up a run, I think, for the first 5 2/3 that he threw this year. And then he gave up a couple and his velocity really came down in his previous outing. I thought tonight was a perfect situation for him to come in. I know that others disagree with that, but his job is a long reliever. And when you're talking about this small of a sample size, this is the perfect situation for him to come in. So I was really impressed with how quickly Baldelli got him out of there. Like, they were looking for something, they saw something, and it had, I don't think, had anything to do with the results. It was something else. Otherwise, you're going to let your long man go more than 6 pitches. So they were looking for something and saw something. Like you, I think I tweeted something to the effect of either he goes on the injured list and they bring in a Sam Clay or Corey Guerin right away tomorrow, or they do just option him. And, you know, I don't know if there's value in that other than they're still going to bring up one of those taxi squad guys. So I fully expect something to happen. You know, maybe like you said, St. Paul, you can work with JP Martinez there to find out if they can find something.
Mm-hmm.
So the big question after that was, of course, then they went to Cody Stashak, who's been absolutely lights out all year this year, all year last year, other than I think he had one walk-off loss in Miami. But he didn't have his command as well. You know, he was sitting 92 right down the middle, and the slider he hung to Soler. A good hitter's going to hit that. A power hitter like Soler is going to hit it a long ways. Stasiak just wasn't himself tonight. Did you see anything there? Or, again, I think he's the right guy to bring in this situation. I don't feel like they made a mistake in bringing Thorpe in, and they corrected that quickly. I don't think they made a mistake in bringing Stasiak into that situation. Sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think he was the guy, one of the many good choices that they could have chose to bring in at that point. The reality is he wasn't going to have a 0 ERA all season. He was going to give up a run at some point. And like you said, if you don't have your full set of your full stuff on any given night, and you hang a slider to a home run hitter like Soler, you're going to get touched at some point. So I'm not too concerned with what we saw from Stasiak. I think all the positives he's shown up to this point far outweigh the one bad outing. It's just one of those things that happens in baseball. You can't hang your head too much about that one.
It just stinks because the Twins had just taken the lead. They were down by 1, and then they scored 3 thanks to the Byron Buxton home run, which we will definitely talk about in just a minute or two. So they had just taken a 2-run lead, and then they gave up a 6th spot, which, again, you don't obviously want that to happen. It just played out kind of the worst case scenario. In fact, as I look through my notes here, and I'm not going to get too close there, I'll just show you that there are notes so that people think I prepare for this stuff. I put a note saying Thorpe dash oof. I've written the word oof in a long time. And then Stasiak, I put, hanging 0-2 pitch to Soler, and then a fastball right down the middle to Salvador Perez, who, going back, and again, they talked about how he's only 30 years old. He just has killed Twins pitching for so long, and now that he's back after his Tommy John surgery, which is interesting for a catcher. You don't see a lot of catchers with Tommy John surgery. He's back, and, he absolutely unloaded on that. So I do want to talk – I want to continue to talk about this bullpen, because at that point Jorge Alcala came in. And now, I know you're a sports emphasis within your physical therapy degree. So as you look at Jorge Alcala, he is long and he is lean, and he's got just a whip action. Now, I want to ask you this because I was at his Major League debut last year, and he just looked like he was lugging the ball, like he was throwing an 8-pound ball, and he was hitting about 91, 92. And now, especially after his first outing, he looks so free and easy, and he's making 98 and 99 look simple. Is that a mental thing, or is that a physical thing when you're that kind of nervous and excited and all those things, and you're just trying to overthrow that you actually lose velocity?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of the two. So a lot of people, if you have the talent level of Alcala, particularly, at the lower levels, and I'm talking like high school, travel ball, that kind of stuff, you can get away with just, inefficient pitching motion, throwing it as hard as you can. And if you can hit the low 90s, mid 90s, in most cases, it doesn't matter, what your control is. If you have any other kind of stuff, you're gonna blow people out of the water, and you're gonna be fantastic. Now, the benefit of getting up towards, AA, AAA into the majors, working with Wes Johnson, is that not only does the teaching improve, but also the resources improve. So they could get him on a force plate, or all the motion capture devices, and say, all right, if we can tweak this in your motion and we can get you generating more power with your hips and less with your shoulder, not only is that going to make your arm healthier, but it's going to make your pitching motion more smooth, more efficient. And with that, that's where the boosts in miles per hour come from. So I would imagine that's part of it. Also, just getting older and getting stronger. Anytime you can add muscle, you're going to add velocity. So I think it's a combination of improved mechanics, improved efficiency, and then also just straight muscle mass gain.
Sure. And I just think a little bit of success and seeing 99 go right by good major league hitters. I pointed out on Twitter that he had a great inning against their 8, 9, and 1 hitters. Kind of made it, just throw it by them, and a good slider. That when he went 1, 2, 3 against their 2, 3, 4 hitters, to me that says a lot as well. So that was very impressive. Then the other guy I want to ask you about is the other guy we saw tonight, and that's Sean Poppin. And I wrote in February during the first spring training that I thought he was a breakout candidate because I think his stuff is incredible. He gets so much movement in a down and away against a lefty or down and in, similar to Dobnik, just without the smooth mechanics. And I really like watching him pitch, and I think he's got a ton of potential. But you could see he's got so much movement. He's going to walk a lot of guys too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we saw some of the negative side of Mitch Garver being on one knee when you've got a guy that gets that much movement and throws fairly hard. So do you look at Poppin's delivery? You look at the recoil that he has that I know Francisco Liriano had, especially early in his career. Does that give you any concern?
To a certain extent, what's always tough about, predicting injuries or being overly concerned about injuries is that you could have someone with just the craziest, funkiest mechanics and they never get hurt ever. And then you could have someone with like Liriano and boom, UCL's gone and career's never the same. Just because someone has a, high effort mechanics or not the most efficient delivery, something like that, it can indicate a potential increase in injury risk, but that doesn't promise an increase in injury risk, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I totally agree. I think Poppin's got the raw stuff. He just needs some polish. And kind of like you said, he has so much movement on the the fastball, kind of that tails away in particular, that, yeah, he's going to walk a lot of people, but he's also going to get a lot of swinging strikes. And like you said, with Garver, that his defense is something that I've kind of been keeping an eye on this year, because he went from being, below average to average or above average, and it feels like he's taken a step back this year. But I also wonder, how much of that is, yes, Poppin has a lot of tail on his ball, but so does Dobnik, so does Barrios. And like you said, being on one knee, it makes it so you can frame and makes the strike zone bigger, but it maybe cuts down on some of your ability to block the ball. I feel like there's been a lot of pass balls, a lot of wild pitches. How much of that is on Garver? How much of that is on the pitching staff? Barrios not always having the best command. I think that's just another thing we gotta monitor moving forward.
For sure. My name is Seth Stos of Twins Daily. Joining me is Twins Daily contributor Lucas Seehafer, who is a physical therapist, and that's why I'm asking him lots of questions that I certainly wouldn't know the answer to. The one question I'm trying hard to avoid is, when do I know to go in and get my carpal tunnel syndrome checked out? Because if I can't feel like this whole general area, is that a bad thing? But I'm not going to ask him that. We're going to stick to Minnesota Twins baseball at this point. And again, welcome your questions either in the Q&A or in the chat room. Or like I said, if you want to raise your hand, we can bring you into the conversation as well. So Steve Pincus writes in the Q&A, and Mike Link writes in the chat room. Let's start with Steve's question. What do the Twins need to do to help Garver get going? And I think that's batting-wise. Mike Link adds, what is wrong with Garver? I hated to see him lead off, but putting him in leadoff made no sense. I'll start. He batted leadoff against left-handed pitchers all year last year and did great. And he's probably started about 3 games against left-handers this year as leadoff batter. I don't know why Rocco Baldelli would change that. I get it. Garver is in a slump. I think he's hitting .097 right now. I think he's 3 for 31, 3 for 32, something like that. At some point, something will need to happen, but I don't think you start making changes 15 games into the season. If it were a 162-game season, yeah, we'd be talking about it, but it wouldn't be a big deal. It's still the same number of games, even if that 15 games now represents 25% of the season. Let's talk about the offense. Lucas, are you seeing anything from Garver that's either encouraging or just something to really take notice as a negative?
Yeah, I feel like it seems like he's not seeing the ball well or something. He's a lot of pitches have been thrown that last year he would have, mashed over the fence or at least would have got a piece on it. And it seems like he's just whiffing or he's barely fouling it off backwards. He's, like you said, he's batting .097. I mean, that's unsustainably bad. Usually we talk about someone who's doing something and it's unsustainably good. This is like the exact opposite. So I think he will get on track at some point. Anyone who's played baseball has probably been in a slump like this at some point, and all it takes is one hard hit ball, and then it seems like boom, you can't miss. We're seeing this with Buxton. I mean, his batting average was down in the 100s, and all of a sudden, 3 straight good games, his batting average is up around 250. He's 3 home runs. He seems like he's crushing the ball every time he's up to the plate, even if he's getting out. So, I think it all it'll take is, it could just be one good game, and then he'll be back on track, and we'll be like, oh, hey, remember when Garver was started off 3 for 32? And it'll just be like a memory.
We'll all chuckle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when the parade is going through downtown Minneapolis, and we're all at home watching it because we're still quarantined. But yeah, it's one of those things where I can't pick one specific thing, but it just seems like the foundation of it is he's just not seeing the ball well or something.
And I guess how long does the fact that they had a stop start with spring training, quarantine for 3 months, summer camp, and then you're going. Some guys have handled it well, just like at the beginning of any season. Some guys get off the fast starts. Some guys get off the slow starts. Christian Yelich is one he's like 3 for 48 or something like that right now. Things like this happen, and it's weird. I see a couple of things. Number one, I still see a guy who, like he did last year, takes a lot of pitches on the corners and just off of the corners, things that, frankly, you can't hit anyway. And a lot of those this year seem to be being called strikes. I also see he's hit a few balls lately that have been right on the nose, 104, 106 miles per hour, right into a shift or something like that. But the other thing that I'm seeing is he is just missing those pitches right down the middle that last year he just rarely missed. And secondly, he's had a few called third strikes this year on pitches that, they're right there. So you just kind of and you wonder how much of that is mental versus physical at this point, because it has to be frustrating because, knowing Mitch, he's worked hard at hitting and perfecting that craft, and he's got such a great approach that I don't think he's lost yet. I just hope he doesn't. I hope he sticks to his plan because, there's just so much talent there. I think the leadoff spot is fine against lefties. Maybe against righties, you drop him from 6 to 8 for right now or something like that. You have anything more to add on his offense?
Well, also pitchers are just pounding the outside of the zone when he's up to the plate. Last year, when he was more or less an unknown commodity, the pitchers weren't worried about throwing anything, high or inside to him. They're just not doing that this year. So, basically last year, Garver made the pitchers make an adjustment to him, and now the pitchers are making him make the adjustment. So I think part of this is probably him is, maybe behind the scenes, him and hitting coach are working on making those tweaks and those adjustments. And, kind of like Sano last year, where it seemed like he was just struggling like crazy, and then all of a sudden he just explodes once he gets things going right. So maybe that's going on as well. Like I said, it could just be, one good game, and then this will all just be a unhappy memory.
Absolutely. And on the defensive side, it might be some camera angles, but it can be frustrating. And I know that the Twins' focus is on pitch framing because they typically have to pitch frame or they receive the ball anywhere from 15 to, 150 to 180 times in a game. Whereas blocking, you hopefully don't have to do a lot. I get a little frustrated watching the backhand attempts on balls a foot away when there's a runner on third or a runner on second. The other thing I'd point out is you can see he's got a rocket for an arm, that he's very accurate. But, man, I don't know if it's the pitchers completely or if they're just being told don't even look at the runners, because I've seen this year more people getting just huge jumps, and the catchers have absolutely no chance of getting guys out.
Yeah, and a lot of the Twins pitchers have they don't have that slide step, or at least they don't employ it very often. So if you get a runner like Mondesi tonight and you do the big step, it doesn't matter how strong Garver's arm is, you're not going to get him out. But yeah, I've noticed that too. And, maybe that's a byproduct of steals just going down in recent years. I think I want to say last year steals were at an all-time low or something like that. So, right. Is that, and the Royals they're kind of an anomaly where they have Soler. But other than that, do they really have any big, power threats on the team? No, they're kind of the get on base, steal second. They're kind of the kind of chippy that way. So, you know, is it an anomaly, and was it just something we'll have to fight against teams like Kansas City or Pittsburgh? I guess that's to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, those are the teams that can be really frustrating for pitchers. The guys that don't strike out, make you throw extra pitches and make you do all the right things, and even try to have a running game. And they've got a team built for that. And frankly, Mike Matheny is a terrific manager who's been around a long time and done a lot of good things. So along with the strikeouts for Garver, I think Sano right now has 31 strikeouts like 21 strikeouts and 39 at bats or something like that, maybe 45 plate appearances. And again, same thing. He's just missing pitches that look really hittable from the TV screen.
Mm-hmm. And the ones that he does, he hits them a mile. So
yeah.
So it's like, you know, you feel like he's right on the edge of breaking out. You know, he had that big game against Pittsburgh. And then it's just 2-3 games of striking out constantly. Now he's going to strike out. That's the way he is. He's feast or famine. But right now he's a lot more famine than what you'd think. Yep. But yeah, I mean, this is something that we've seen with him before, where he'll just go through these stretches where he just can't touch the ball, and then he'll go through a stretch where he just can't miss the ball. And I feel like part of why the last 3 games have been so frustrating for Twins fans, and even the Twins, I'm sure, is that it feels like all their feast or famine players are famining right now. You know, and they happen to be famining against 2 of the worst teams in baseball.
Yeah, and that's tough. I mean, obviously you bring a different attitude to the field when you're playing Cleveland, and you know that Bieber or Clevenger or whatever it is going to be on the mound. Even Savali and you know, there are other pitchers. They at least know them and such. But they know Danny Duffy. They've seen Danny Duffy plenty, and they actually hit him okay. It's really frustrating right now. Nelson Cruz has been pretty good. I think his OPS is still right around 1,000, and always seems to put together a good quality professional at bat. Max Kepler had another home run tonight. I feel like his at bats have been generally pretty good. And again, Eddie Rosario had another walk tonight. And if nothing else, I think Twins fans have to give him obvious credit for at least trying and trying to put his plan into practice. And you know, even with him, he's a streaky hitter too. And right now he's okay. He's doing all right. That can go up and down as well. But the nice thing about this lineup, I feel, is they're still like third. I think I did an article for Twins Daily this morning. They're still like second or third in runs per game and runs total and all that in the American League out of 15 teams. They still have enough length in that lineup that they can give guys days off, and guys can be struggling, and they're still going to be in games because there are enough hitters throughout the lineup. And the guy right now that's hitting really well is Byron Buxton. And I know 3 or 4 days ago we had people asking when the Twins just give up on him. And hopefully they've seen over these last 4 games. The first game in Pittsburgh, he had the doubles that was rocketed down the left field line. And now he's hit home runs in 3 straight games, and actually might have been robbed of another one last night as well. Today he did have that play in center field, though, where he jumped a little bit early and hit his back. And if anyone else and those listening are like me, you had to at least kind of grimace a little bit and hope everything was going to be all right.
Yeah, I think the whole state of Minnesota collectively held their breath at the same time on that one. Though I think it is worth mentioning that he, if I remember right, he went off with 2 feet and he landed, and he hit square with his back, which are the 2 things that he basically said he's been working on, making sure that he does. And from a performance specialist kind of background that I have, you know, there's some legitimate science that goes along with that. Basically, by jumping off 2 feet, it breaks your momentum just enough, and it gives you more control while you're in the air. So even though it kind of seems like really they're teaching him to jump off 2 feet rather than 1 feet, how big of an impact can that have? It could actually potentially have a really big impact, and it's kind of nice to see Buxton actually doing that in game. Like you said, he's gonna have to think about it for a long time. It takes a long time for those motor patterns to kind of be implanted in the brain. But the fact that it was, you know, a real live situation where split second decisions had to be made, and he didn't revert to his jump off 1 foot and crash into the wall with your shoulder first as hard as you can. I think that's got to be a positive sign.
Absolutely. And then again, just good to see him. I know it sounds corny and all, but it's good to see him playing and having fun and smiling, and him and Jake Cave in the dugout the other day, kind of laughing and stuff. When guys are really struggling, you kind of want to still see that. And even though some fans will take that as they don't care, you have to kind of have that within you as well. We just got a few more minutes left. Again, my name's Seth Souza, Twins Daily, along with Lucas Seehafer, talking about another Twins loss tonight. They lost 6-9 to the Royals. Game 3 is tomorrow, Sunday afternoon, and Jose Barrios is on the mound. Speaking of a guy that it would sure be nice to get 7 innings tomorrow. But then again, that bullpen right now, Taylor Rogers, Tyler Duffy, Trevor May, Sergio Romo, Tyler Clippard, these guys are all available tomorrow, and they'll all be ready probably Monday as well. So I think the Twins are in a good position for having just lost 3 in a row. I do have one situation. The Twins were coming back in the I think it was the top of the 6th. The bases loaded, and Byron Buxton hit 106. That was a single that scored 1. The bases remained loaded, and 9th hitter A-Ray Adrianza came up, and he was fine. He hit a nice solid 1-hopper, but right at the shortstop for an easy inning-ending double play. In the 9th inning, Jorge Polanco pinch hit for Adrianza. And even at the time, I made a note wondering if maybe they would have considered pinch hitting Polanco in the 6th inning. And I'm curious if you thought of that as well.
Yeah, honestly, my first thought was I would have liked to see Adrianza take a couple more pitches. I think it was the very first pitch that he swung at, and that was after the pitcher had kind of had some control issues leading up to that at bat. So, I guess my thought didn't necessarily go to Polanco, but I would say, if this was a playoff game or if this was a game against Cleveland late in the season, I think that's definitely something you have to at least consider. Just because that's a game-changing type of play there. If that ball is hit, 5 feet to the left, to the third base side, that's a single, 2-run single. Boom, Twins are winning.
Single. Yeah. Right.
So I think it's one of those things you have to at least get. It has to be in the back of your mind, I think.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things. No matter what you do, it's going to be second guessed. It all comes down to what the results are, because hindsight is 20/20, which probably isn't fair, but that's the reality. And I know that Baldelli will also often say we wanted to keep Buxton off his feet for the day, or Kepler off his feet for the day, meaning wanted to just let them completely free their body and their minds for the day. But then when Polanco was used again as a pinch hitter, which he's been used in that situation twice this week, it does kind of make you wonder. Matthew Taylor, who's my other times that I've hosted this, has been on. What do you think of moving Byron Buxton up in the lineup this week? I could see that giving Buxton a jolt of confidence and possibly boosting the lineup overall. Your thoughts? I'll start with, I think his confidence is sitting pretty good right about now. So I don't think that's going to be a factor in moving him up or down the lineup. Lucas, again, I think that's more of a mental thing than a physical thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a mental thing for sure. And also, if you look at how Baldelli likes to construct his lineups, he likes to kind of alternate. If it's a lefty that's starting on the mound, you'll go righty, lefty, righty, so on and so forth. And if it's a lefty on the mound, a righty on the mound, then you'll go lefty, righty, lefty, all the way down. So if you're looking at who would you then have to swap for Buxton, tonight, for example, it probably would have been Gonzalez at 6, and he went 3 for 3. Now, again, that's a 1-game sample. Right. But I mean, that's the kind of the quality. I mean, we've seen who else was batted 6. We've seen like Sano in that area. We've seen I think Kepler's in that area when he's
been in there.
Yeah. So then you're looking at, all of a sudden, does that mean Kepler is now batting 8th? Does that now mean Sano is batting 8th? I don't think, it's necessarily would be a bad thing. But I also think it would tweak the lineup to an extent that Baldelli, we probably wouldn't see Baldelli do it, I guess is the long and short of my answer.
Yeah, well, and you know what, though, if there's a right-handed batter or if there's a right-handed pitcher, Kepler's batting leadoff. And right now, Sano and Garver could both be hitting 7 and 8 with Buxton hitting 6, or, somehow you space out the righties and lefties. Secondly, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, part of me is like, yeah, you want to get him some more at-bats, and he has the hot hand right now. But that doesn't necessarily mean moving him up a couple of spots means he's going to suddenly keep hitting. I mean, so part of me says just leave him. He was 8th tonight, which was actually moving up 1 spot. So, but you mentioned Marlin Gonzalez. We actually have a new article at Twins Daily that I think Cody Perkle wrote about how valuable he has been. He's played right. He's played third. He's played second. He's played first. And defensively, no matter where you put him, he's been good. And frankly, he's hit, and he's really hit well of late. I mean, what do you say? I mean, he's absolutely done the job that he's been asked to do this season so far.
Yeah, and I would imagine, or I guess I would like to see at this point the Twins re-sign him this coming offseason. I think Marty Gellner had a report in, I think it was yesterday's game, about the switches he's made, particularly batting from the left side of the plate, which is his stronger side anyway. And he just looks like a whole different player offensively. He got off to a super slow start last year, and he kind of woke up as the season went on. But it seems like his hands are so much quicker. He's getting to the ball so much quicker. And that's allowing him to essentially hit the ball harder. And the harder you hit the ball, the more likely you are to get a hit. So I've, and it seems like no matter where you plug him on defense, he does a very solid job. Third base, first base, second base. I've seen him in the outfield a couple times. I would be surprised if we ever see him at shortstop, but he's played second base. I think he's played third, left field in the past. So really the only places I would be surprised to see him are center and shortstop this year. And every single place that they've put him to this point, he's just been – he's at least been neutral or a plus. I don't think he's been a negative anywhere in the field, which is, he's the ultimate Swiss Army knife kind of player at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess one more question for me, and we can call it a show, although we do have one more question in the Q&A from Eric that we will touch on before we leave. This whole concept of it's a shortened season, it's 60 games instead of 162. In theory, every game is worth 2.7 games, so to speak. But ultimately, again, they are one game, and they're one game at a time. It's just that the end point is at 60. So it's really got to be a fine line for the coaching staffs, for the front office, and for the players themselves to try to remember each game is still just one game in the bigger picture. The Twins are in a good spot, and they've had a lot of guys injured. You've talked about them frequently on this show, and including Donaldson and the pitchers that we've talked about. How do you, if you're the leader, if you're the coach, just kind of re-emphasize, whether it's daily or not emphasize it, that these are still just one game at a time?
Yeah, so I think part of that is on the coaching staff to just tell the players, hey, you had a bad game, that's baseball. We have another game tomorrow, and another game the next day, and another game the next day for 20 more straight days. So really, you can't dwell on it. But I think that also lies on not only the individual players themselves, but kind of the leaders on the team. There was a moment before Buxton's last at bat. He ultimately struck out, unfortunately, but he talked to Nelson Cruz. And I don't know if Cruz pulled him aside, but they showed it on broadcast where he went over to Nelson and looked like he was like, hey, what should I do in this situation? And Cruz was just right there to tell him the situation, or, this is what I would look for. I think we're not seeing it, but I guarantee Donaldson is doing that in the dugout. Cruz is a great leader. I would imagine Gonzalez is the type of player to be that vocal leader as well. But yeah, the fact of the matter is the season is so short. You can't dwell on any single game in a regular MLB season. You sure as heck can't do it this season. And sometimes we'll see good teams play down to their competition, just like we'll see them play up to their competition. Maybe this these last 3-4 games are enough of the, kick in the pants for the Twins to say, hey, we can't be doing this. We're better than this. And then season turns around.
There's 2 points to that, though, that I think are important, and I think maybe that'll be what we end on, other than the one question from Eric yet in the chat room, or I'm sorry, in the Q&A. It's easy to say they play down to their competition, which I think is a thing. And I think the fact that there aren't fans in the stands, home fans, or when you're on the road, the visiting fans, that kind of do push you a little bit towards to get a guy out or towards wanting to beat the home team. That might be a bigger factor than players, coaches, or anyone would ever let on. So I think that does come into play, especially in some of these types of situations where you do kind of need to, you're the better team. The other side that bugs me is when fans or whoever it is talk about another team being bad. In baseball, that's really not a thing. At the end of the year, sure, it's a thing. Detroit's going to lose, a bunch of games. Kansas City is going to be right there with Detroit at the bottom of the division. Pittsburgh's not going to be good. The Twins are going to be ahead of the division most likely, but I think we know Chicago will probably be right there. I mean, ultimately 60 games is probably enough to give us a pretty good idea that we would definitely get at 162. But when people think that you just can't lose to a quote-unquote bad team, I mean, the Royals are not good, but they have Whit Merrifield, who has led the league in hits the last 2 years and is incredibly valuable. Jorge Soler hit 48 home runs. He's legit. Alex Gordon's been doing it for a long time and had a lot of success in his career. When they've got Greg Holland and Trevor Rosenthal suddenly good again, great again, throwing 98, 99, 100 with sharp sliders.
He looked good.
These guys are legit. So, yes, they're going to have games where they're good. They could beat the 27 Yankees. And that's why – again, that's probably just a bigger topic in general, but it really annoys me because, Josh Bell of the Pirates is really good. Colin Moran is good. Brian Reynolds is legit. Joe Musgrove is a good pitcher. And all of these teams have arms in their bullpens that throw 96 to 100, and they're going to be fine. So that's the other thing with the 8-team playoffs and one playing 8 in the best-of-3 series. Anything can happen, which will probably be great for ratings. It may not necessarily mean the best teams are going to win. So that's
absolutely
the night. And I apologize to everyone who listened to the whole thing. But I'm going to ask this last question, Lucas, and then we'll get out of here. And it's Eric Kluwer Kluwer, and he asked it right at the beginning, but I kind of wanted to end with it. Is there a legitimate chance MLB cancels the season? And I did see something tonight where if the Cardinals are going to get to 60 games this year, they're going to have to play something like 55 games in 51 days. Physically, that's not possible, is it? Even with 7-inning doubleheaders?
I mean, yeah, I think, well, one, even if they do, and let's say they make the playoffs, then then they're really fried. Right. I think baseball, unfortunately, I don't know what the right wording for that is, but they have every incentive to finish out the season. The fact of the matter is it's a money decision. Now, is there a legitimate chance that the season is canceled? I think absolutely there's a legitimate chance. I mean, they're playing in the middle of a pandemic, but from what we've seen so far is that it seems like the virus is more likely to impact one single team than be spread from team to team, which I don't think is something that people really expected or necessarily were planning for when they were making up the game plan of how baseball was going to handle this situation. Because we've seen the Cardinals be impacted, we've seen the Marlins be impacted, but all of the teams that they've played haven't been impacted. And whether that's a individual team culture, individual team kind of how they handle and go about their business, I think that probably has something to do with it. But also it's just one of those weird things where it was like, all right, this is something that's unexpected. And what happens if, let's say the Marlins situation was even worse and happened at the end of the season? Do you just say, all right, Marlins, you're eliminated and everyone else go about your business? I don't know how they would handle that. I mean, obviously on the surface that wouldn't seem fair, especially, I mean, the Marlins are just lighting the world on fire for God's sakes right now. But, you know, what if the Yankees are first in the NL East and or in the AL East and all of a sudden, boom, their whole, you know, their starting 9 players are out with COVID. What do you do? You can't postpone the playoffs for 2.5 weeks. So I think there's always a legitimate chance, but I mean, it's just, there's an element of that. Everybody is kind of flying by the seat of their pants at the moment.
Yeah. All right. With that, the Twins lost again tonight, their 3rd straight loss. But there's another game tomorrow. That is the beauty of baseball, unless something else happens, like we're just talking about. But they play tomorrow afternoon, Sunday afternoon at, I believe, 1 o'clock in Kansas City to close out this series before a 3-game series in Milwaukee. It'll be Jose Barrios amount. They did announce, I believe, Randy Dobnik on Monday. They haven't announced a Tuesday starter. We know it won't be Rich Hill. And Kenta Maeda pitches on Wednesday. So again, thank you, Lucas Seehafer, for joining tonight. Excellent work on the panel. Be sure to follow him on Twitter, and he writes everywhere. Thank you also for joining and listening to the Postgame Pint tonight, especially those of you who contributed a question in the chat room or the Q&A. If you missed this, it'll be available hopefully tomorrow morning on Twins Daily's YouTube page, the Twins Daily's podcast, which is now available on iTunes, the Twins Daily Facebook page, and also our game recap from tonight. Our next post-game pint will not be until Monday, so be sure to check that out. And with that, have yourselves a great evening. And let's go, Twins. Let's get back in that win column. Have a good night, everyone.